here, but I'm Shane Stender. If I haven't met you yet, I look forward to meeting you all, so make sure to say hi to me. A little bit about myself, over 20 years in automotive. Started way back in high school, actually working in a car dealership, and then subsequently spent a good portion of my career over the last 20 years working for automotive on the OEM side, everything from finance to sales to distribution, and a number of merchandising and marketing roles in there. And then I've been a managing partner in SilverBack Advertising for the last 10 years, where we work directly with dealer groups and dealers like yourselves. So today, what we're going to be talking about is what I call the dealership triathlon. All right, a little bit of marketing and a little bit of advertising in this session today. And the dealership triathlon, I'm a triathlete. I guess I'm a little bit crazy that way, but I like ultra endurance events, you know, and in a triathlon, you can't just do one thing, right? If you're not familiar with them, a triathlon is an athletic event. It's a swim, it's a bike, it's a run. They come in various distances. I prefer the extremely long and painful ones myself. But you can't just be a swimmer and get through it. You can't just be a cyclist and get through it. You have to know how to swim. And in marketing and advertising in the dealership landscape right now, we see a lot going on where we're just focused on one particular thing in one particular area. And so what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit of how we do all three of those things. There's three things that we're going to talk about that are really important to what you do in marketing and what you do in advertising in your dealership, and that is what I call your dealership triathlon, okay? The first one of those is attribution, all right? So the first one is attribution, and this is a little tough without my slides, so just bear with me here. But in marketing and advertising, over the last 20 years, we've developed a lot of tools and a lot of technology to help us really deliver, you know, advertising to consumers in very efficient ways. And along with all of these technologies and models, you know, that we're working with now comes attribution. Thank you. And there we go. All right. We're up. We're good. Awesome. We got some visuals now. Nobody move. Everybody stay very still. All right. Yeah, so we kind of covered about me a little bit here, but in attribution, we find ourselves kind of chasing a single source of truth for much of what we do. What is the one thing that I can invest my advertising into and see exactly this brought me the customer, this created the link to the sale, right? And that's really hard to do when you sell products that are 90% or more sold offline, still sold, you know, completed the sale in the dealership, right? Also going into that is the journey itself. So what we're going to try today is we're going to try a better approach. Okay, we're going to try a three-pronged approach that combines attribution, storytelling, and media mix. Okay, so starting with attribution and going back to this myth of a single source attribution. We're always chasing this, right? Because as marketers, as advertisers, have custodians of marketing budgets, we want to know what is the thing that is driving people to make an ultimate sale. But the reality is it's a really complex journey for the user, and they are exposed to and seeing a lot in a non-linear fashion, and that makes it very hard for you to break down. So I'm having a typical day, and I'm looking at ads on Facebook, and I'm listening to music and hearing ads on Spotify. I'm doing some search on Google. I'm reading a business news site, seeing some digital out of home. Which one of these is the raindrop that made me come into your store or made me reach out to your store and ultimately buy from you, right? That's really hard to tell. A great analogy that I heard is which raindrop started the flood, right? So which one of these, if we look at all of our media touch points as raindrops, which one starts the flood? And that's really hard to do. And what happens is a lot of times with the resources at your disposal, we get stuck in that and we make decisions off of that. You know, this says that it sold me 30 cars, so I'm going to do more of it and less of something else, right? And what we really need to do is be looking at attribution and different models that can help us go beyond like a single source of truth. So looking at this as information that helps us with our campaigns and helps us optimize to do better in the future. Also, we can look at this attribution information as ways to inform our BDC, our service managers, our other departments of what is working. So as we've progressed through time and these attribution models have come around, we've used a number of them. Last click was used by a very big walled garden up until very recently. There's linear, there's time regression, there's time decay, U-shaped. Data-driven is a model that is being leaned into by a lot of digital advertising platforms and programs right now. This model takes a lot of information, and it's still not perfect. All right, and that's what I really would like everyone to take away from this particular slide is, while we use attribution, it's not perfect, and that's why we shouldn't look at it as just the silver bullet, but we should look at it as really good information to help us inform the future decisions that we're going to make and help us inform the next two sections of the triathlon that we're going to talk about. Another thing that I'm really bullish on is this notion of sales matching. And I have it up there on screen where it says sales influenced, not sales sold. So in a lot of attribution models, we've started over the last 8 to 10 years, we've started to talk about sales matching and how many sales we can match back to a specific tactic, right, or to a specific source. And what we should really be talking about is sales influenced, right? Because again, going back to the fact that most of your sales are done offline, there's a lot of other factors that come into play, as we know. So talking about and starting to change that little voice in your head to sales influenced instead of sales matching, all of a sudden changes how you start to look at the data and how you start to use it to inform future decisions, as opposed to using it to say, this worked, this didn't work, right? The other piece is from a marketing perspective, I'm also bullish on using attribution for leads and trying to define, well, how many leads, how many touch points, whether that be a chat lead, a form lead, all those various sources, how many leads can we say, saw the advertising, engaged with the advertising? That's a great touch point. And I think from a marketer's perspective, better information than ultimately, what sold the car, because as I said, there's a lot that goes into selling a car beyond just the consumer seeing an ad. Multi-touch and bimodal attribution mentioned at the bottom there. If you haven't heard of these, definitely take a minute to research them in more detail or catch me afterwards and we can get a little nerdy and talk in the weeds on these two. But these are two that we've really enjoyed experimenting with lately. Just like the others, they have their holes and they're not perfect, but they consider a lot more touch points and are pretty effective, especially as we get to talking about media mix, at helping you look at where to optimize, in your media mix. Okay, so 3 tips that I want to leave you on the first part of the triathlon leg. The pro tips: lean into attribution, not as a unicorn, but to inform and optimize your future campaigns. Look for platforms. When you're looking at platforms that you're using to execute the media, right? Look at platforms that have more than one attribution model, okay? This allows you to kind of decide as a department, as an organization, this is the type of attribution that we feel most valuable, and we want to try to use that consistently across, as many of the platforms as we can. Not always an option. In a world of walled gardens, Google is going to tell us what it allows for attribution, and Facebook is going to have, what it allows for attribution. And there are some outside sources that you can bring in, and those, cost a little bit more. But try to find where you can. Try to find more than one attribution option, and then leverage information from attribution to facilitate what we're going to talk about next. And what we're talking about next is the second part of the triathlon. You've gotten done with the swim part, you're moving on to the bike, and that's the behavioral science part of the show today, right? So behavioral science. You didn't know you were in for a science lesson, did you? Storytelling. Storytelling is behavioral science, right? People better understand and remember information that is relayed to them in a story. Think about this from a personal standpoint. How many people have heard the story of David Kain? How many people have heard your personal career history story? When you meet someone and you give them a story about yourself, when your BDC is talking to someone, what is the story that they're projecting to the consumer, right? Inventory ads are not necessarily stories. They are a part of the storyline that you want to tell in your media mix and your marketing campaigns, but they alone don't tell a story, right? And this is a challenge that I think we've seen, or I've seen, and we've studied over the last 15 years as advertising has evolved and more technology platforms come on the scene to deliver those ads, right? Is whether you call it a vehicle listing ad or an inventory ad or a dynamic inventory ad, etc., right? Just showing the vehicle and the price, right? This holds extreme value in the process, but not necessarily tells your story, right? It doesn't give you a narrative when you're trying to tell customers why to come see you. So narratives. You want to set up narratives and use narratives to your advantage. And where you use narratives, I got an example on screen here. But with today's advertising and with all the technology that you can deploy at your disposal, you can really talk to people differently at the different stages, on the different devices, and across tactics. Sometimes all within the same campaign, depending on what type of platform or service provider that you may be using. So in essence, what we're doing is developing chapters. All right, chapters of a book. So think of, we're going to talk about a cool little project takeaway that I'm going to leave with you. But think of, each device as a chapter, right? Your laptop, we got cell phones in here. We've got big screen TVs at home. If you've got 15-year-olds at home like I do, you probably have them on a cell phone, a big screen TV, and a Nintendo Switch all at the same time, which I really still don't understand how he can pull that off. But you have all these different devices that people are interacting with throughout their day seamlessly. All right, those are all opportunities for you to have different types of stories. Every platform, every device has different opportunities. And I won't read down through the list, but mobile, for example, right? Just within mobile, you have long form, you have short form, depending on what platforms you're advertising in. You have vertical, you have horizontal. Lots of different formats, lots of different content that can be engaged with. And it really gives you, when you look at your story, when you start to sit down with your marketing team, with your advertising team, and say, what is our story? How are we going to tell it across these different devices? Then you really start to develop a bigger picture for the consumer and make it more about just the vehicle and the price. This is just a visualization of kind of what I was just talking about, but telling the story beyond search and social, using some sequential advertising or some sequential messaging in your conversation. Sometimes within the same platform, you may be you're talking to the same audience. Let's just pick an audience, right? Let's say it's your first-party data, and you're talking to people who have done business with you before, right? That's a difference. That's an opportunity to tell them a story that's different than a third-party audience that's in market that are people who have never done business with your store before, right? And you can segment those things, and you leverage all these different devices that your ads are running on to utilize different types of formats as you're communicating with the audience. And speaking of audience, understanding the audience is extremely important and is a part of setting up your storytelling. Looking at their demographics, their online behavior, their consumption, the data from your CRM, your CDP, etc. Whether that's your team in-house, whether that's your team plus the providers that you're working with. But considering their emotional and their rational brain is something that you want to stop and think about and put a real asterisk next to that one, all right? Because when you're developing storytelling, we want to think emotional and rational, all right? Showing people a piece of inventory and a price, that's 100% rational. But we all make irrational decisions. We do them every day. We call those emotional decisions. And then we justify our emotional decisions with a rational explanation, right? So I go out and I get a new truck, and the payment's $900 a month, and I come home and my wife is like, what the F? What is this all about? $900 a month? Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to rationalize my expenditure to her. I'm going to say, oh, you have no idea how much this truck is going to do for us. We are going to be able to haul so much lumber from the lumber yard. I'm going to be able to build you that shed out back. I promise I'll get to it started this weekend. I'm going to be able to, redo the landscaping and bring it all in. We're going to be able to go camping and haul this stuff, right? I'm going to put the rational to the emotional decision that I make, right? And your consumers are doing that every day. And just like when you heard Active Engage talk yesterday about the different generations and how the younger generations, right, are seeing a review online, maybe reading Reddit, and that's changing their mind. And then they go to TikTok, and that changes their mind again, right? Those are emotional decisions that are going on. So consider that when you're coming up with your storytelling, and do I have enough emotional storytelling to go along with the data that I'm giving them? Okay. So this is kind of a take-home activity, and this is in the presentation, so you don't have to write this down. But the idea here is, when you have some time, go back with your departments, list out all of the main marketing channels, even channels that you may not be using right now, right? If you're not budgeting for OTT and online video yet, still list it out, right? So list out as many channels as you can think of that you could potentially want to use for your advertising. Then list the strengths and the weaknesses of those channels. And then based on the strengths and the weaknesses, what kind of story can I tell on this platform? Right? On paid search, I'm not going to tell a video story, right? There's not going to be any great scenery or pictures of me or pictures of the vehicle. So it's, okay, how do I tell my story in text? On social media, there's multiple different ways to tell the story, right? We can have vertical stories, we can have our regular feeds, we can have reels, we can have TikTok. So go back, do this little exercise, and it's a great exercise that's going to help you in part 3, and it's going to apply to part 3 of how you actually set up your media mix as well. But media channel, strengths of that channel, weaknesses of that channel, and then what kind of story can you tell within that medium for your dealership or dealer group. All right. So our pro tips here. Find the story that's right for you. All right. There's lots of different stories out there. This is a great exercise to go through beyond your marketing team as well. I've seen some dealer groups that have solicited really their whole organization, to say, hey, tell me the story of our business. Give me the 60-second elevator pitch of our dealer group or our individual store, right? See what you get back. Do outside research. There's third parties that can help with this. Obviously, your own internal marketing teams, can work on this. But develop some of the ideas of what are some of the stories you can tell, and then this is where, on that last exercise, you can take these types of stories. In video, I want to tell the birth of my business story. In search, I want to tell competitive differentiator stories, etc. It's not just going to guide you internally and give you sort of a advertising compass internally. It's also going to help your partners and your providers, that you're working with when you do these exercises and you set this up. These are all things that you can pass along to them and say, this is how we're structured and this is what we're working towards. Use data to guide your storytelling. So the first part, the attribution that we talked about, no, we're not looking at it as a silver bullet. We're looking at it to help inform our storytelling, right? What information is coming back to us from those campaigns that we can look at for our storytelling. Leverage AI for production support, right? There's a lot of good tools available to you, and this it keeps getting more efficient and more inexpensive. So some of you may have organizations where you have a video production company built into your organization, and you can do all of your video assets and everything else you would need yourself. Some of you may not, and you need to go outside for assistance, and there's some really efficient and cost-effective resources out there so that you can say, yeah, I don't have to deliver the same message across every device, anymore. I don't have to create the old days of creating a TV spot. And then when online video first came available and people were moving from broadcast to online video, guess what we saw? Well, take my TV spot and just put it, online, right? That doesn't need to exist anymore. There's a lot of efficient ways that you can go about managing and getting all of this creative and production done. So now we've made it through the first two. We've made it through the bike. We've made it through the run. We're almost at the finish line. All you have to do is finish a 26.2 mile run, right? Really simple. But this is a complex part, and it's a part that you can't really stumble at either. We need all three pieces. If we don't nail down the media mix, then all of that work into the storytelling isn't going to mean much at the end of the day for us. So we have our story ready. Where are we going to tell it? The best mix of media is the things that can work together towards reaching your audience and your goals. So we're going to talk about setting up your goals as an important part of this. One thing that we see at my firm a lot and spend a lot of time I spend a lot of time educating on is you have so much being thrown at you. Do this, try this, use this, right? And if you don't have your own goal kind of set up for media mix, then you're going to try all these things, and that is a new form of just like spray and pray, right? To coin that phrase. So you really want to have your marketing goals set up so that you can then define your media mix strategy, and then you can look for the tools that fit your media mix strategy the best. All right, so this is exercise number 2. That I'm going to leave with you to take back to your teams and work on. You may come up with more than 6, but these are my kind of fundamental 6 places that you want to start. And you'll have the deck as well as a part of this, so you'll be able to go back to it and refer to it. But target audience, marketing objectives, channel analysis, relating the channels to the storytelling. So now we're bringing in that exercise that we did in storytelling, and this is where you're bringing it into your media mix planning. Setting your campaign and measurement goals and defining overall success. Defining overall success is a very important one. It sounds simpler than it is, but when you really start to put it in to action, one of the first things that comes up is, well, is my definition of success the same as the CEO or the marketing director or the company that I'm working with to execute the media? Are they defining success the same way as me? So setting up that what success looks like for you in your media campaigns and in your media mix, that's a really important step so that everyone can get on the same page, and then you as a marketing advertising team can actually go to work on the fundamentals. Again, analytics continues to play a role, just like we can leverage it in storytelling. We can also leverage it in media mix, looking for patterns and trends within our campaign performance so that we can deliver to the right audiences and look for, okay, do we need to make a change in our media mix? This is where analytics can come into play and help advise us on utilizing the attribution models. Ideally, like I said before, if you can find, or you leverage attribution models that cross platforms, that's going to be very advantageous for you. And now we're going to take a look at the study that I mentioned at the beginning that we worked on. So this is a bimodal study where we were looking at media mix. We took dealers from all across the country, all different parts of the country, and all different manufacturers with a 5-month study that we did here. The goal of this study was to look at media mix, channel performance, and channel incrementality, right? So this is like an example of some of the attribution study stuff that you can get into when you get into, multi-touch or bimodal like we have here. So the reason this is important and this kind of information is useful, again, not as a silver bullet, but useful to inform us for future decisions, is because even though we're setting up a media mix, a lot of things exist in silos still, right? Google is a walled garden. Facebook is a walled garden. Amazon, is building itself as a walled garden. You have open internet platforms that kind of cross publishers and share information back. So how do you bring this all together as a marketing team? And that was our goal here, was to bring these walled gardens and these open sources and bring them together in a study where we could really see, what was happening. And also afterwards, I'm more than happy, if you're interested in the full study, I'd be more than happy to shoot you a PDF of the entire study. Just, grab me in the hallway and let me know, and I'll shoot it over to you. But a couple of things we saw was that a lot of the ads that don't have click-through really impact the ads that have click-through sources, right? So there's a lot of media sources, especially when you get into like programmatic video and OTT and those types of places where now you're serving ads on a big screen TV. There's nothing to click through. So sources like GA4 aren't necessarily a great tell for what's working. And that's where information like this comes in handy, because we can see across all that what order they've interacted with ads in and how that comes out in the results. And what we saw, a couple of the big key takeaways was, programmatic ads before them engaging with a paid search ad, we saw click-through rate go up 5 times, right? So it had a massive impact, when they were seeing that programmatic ad and then eventually making their way in that convoluted, nonlinear funnel to search, and ultimately the increase in percentage versus people who hadn't seen a programmatic ad and only engaged in a search ad, right? So again, back to the power of storytelling, right? Then one of our takeaways from that is back to that storytelling. Storytelling matters. Having these other avenues to expose the brand to helps some of these lower funnel things down the road. CTV had a really big impact when paired with search. Display also had a really big impact prior to search. Events per user I thought was pretty neat, and that's why I put that stat up here. But as we saw back, anywhere from social at 1.6, all the way up to 3.25 average for display. But this is what the users were seeing across the various network of ads that we were able to track and attribute back to those campaigns. Programmatic plus search had an average lift of 146%. So again, showing the impact of some non-search media on what you're doing in those low funnel areas. All right, so getting to the final here with the pro tips, and be audience first. All right, first one, be audience first. We've also had sort of a change in media and advertising over the last decade, where we went from a lot of publisher first strategies to now being very audience first, right? And there's a lot of great folks here, the Orbeez of the world, Clairvoys of the world, that work with first party audiences, and how you use that in your CDPs and so forth. And so now we're in this phase where we can be very audience first. A lot of the platforms that you're using to deliver ads can target or use your existing audiences really well to deliver those messages, and you don't have to necessarily worry about the publisher as much. In fact, there's some platforms like a Trade Desk, for example, that is very agnostic to inventory. It's about reaching the consumer on whether they like to read the New York Times or whether they like to watch TV on Fubo or listen to music on Spotify. It's about finding what is that best impression and when is the right time to deliver it to them. So a lot of good opportunities to be audience first in your media mix, and as you're setting up your media mix, I would encourage you to look at any opportunity you have to be audience first as opposed to publisher first. Leverage technology, like I said, where you can across devices. So platforms that are going to help you deliver your media across devices, across publishers, even better. Media mix is not static. So this is not something you set up once and then revisit it next year. This is something that is a living organism in your marketing and advertising team. And then plan a media mix that allows you to leverage the storytelling and the attribution that you've worked hard to set up. Okay. The QR code that you see on screen here, if you scan that, it should take you to a micro URL page that has a PDF for you. And this is a PDF of Gemini prompts. You could probably use it in ChatGPT and Copilot. It might need a little tweaking for those, but we designed these prompts. There's a lot of them, but if you take them in order and plug them in with your information into Gemini, it'll pump you back information with a complete recommendation for an integrated marketing communication plan, a media mix, even down to budget information based on what you tell it, right? So pretty cool stuff. Play with it. I will say I wouldn't use that. Like, don't go back and be like, I've got a silver bullet. This is how we're planning from now on, okay? But it is fun to take a look at and see where that technology, again, is taking us. And the reason I put that in there and share it with you is so that you can start to practice with that technology. Practice with that technology to use it to help you in your marketing media mix planning, because you can get a lot of great information back, and you might even get some narratives and some storytelling that you didn't think about that you can then take as ideas and run with. Okay, so now it's time to begin. Like I said, there is no finish to this triathlon. You finish one, you're going to begin again. So you're at the starting line. We're going to use attribution to advise us and guide us, but not as a silver bullet. We're going to re-embrace storytelling, which sort of fell by the wayside for many of years, but we're going to bring that back into your dealerships as something that separates you in your media plan, and you're going to use a strategic media mix to ultimately help you carry this out and execute on it. And with that, I think we've got 2 or 3 minutes, but feel free, like I said, I'm out in the hallway. Esther and Anna are here with me as well. Feel free to grab any of us. If there's anything deeper that you'd like to dive into, more than happy to have that conversation, more than happy to share the case study or anything else that would help give you some ideas and help guide you. So thank you.
Thank you. Could you all give them a nice warm thank you? So Shane, obviously a lot of good information. I don't know if you noticed Paul Folletti over there to the right's making copious notes for NCM. That's good. He covered a lot of detailed information that I think all of us will benefit from. Does anybody have any questions or anything you need some more clarity on? All right. Paul, what are your thoughts? Oh, we do have a hand raised, so go ahead. Oh. I'm going to mic you up just a bit.
I'm going to put you on stage. Here you go.
For dealerships with a minimal marketing budget, what 3 tactics would you recommend would be best to drive sales and service? Just like top 3.
Yeah. I would probably first separating sales and service to me is pretty important. Because some different channels can reach them effective. Some of the times the same channels can reach them effectively, but with service, you're a lot of times going after a ton of first-party data, right? So with service, I'd want to use places where I can use that first-party data, whether that be in Facebook and stuff like that. So I'll stick to the sales side first. Yes, I think there's still value in paid search, and you need to be in paid search, although I don't think it needs to be at the levels that a lot of dealers have become accustomed to over the last 10 years. And within search, there's some programs that I'm a little less of a fan of. Don't get me started on Performance Max, or the next guy won't get to speak. But after that, social. And when I say social, there's a lot of different options within social, but just generically social. And then the third would be programmatic, and probably starting with display. So a really limited budget, social video, and is going to do better than trying to be on connected TV or OTT or stuff like that. Those are places where they provide really strong value overall, but you do need a little bit of budget to run in there, and If you've got a micro budget, it's just not going to get the reach and the scale. And then the AI machine learning that is used in them isn't ever really going to get a chance to get running, and optimize. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Did you notice once she got the mic, she didn't hand it back? She's like, let me get up there. Shane, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're going to go to break now.